Hey, badass listeners, I hope you had a great summer. And I hope you enjoyed the Summer Reset Reboot series. If you took the time to spend the 15 minutes every week listening to each one of those episodes, I think you will find that stepping into fall will be a little bit easier. Getting back to those routines and all of the things that we talked about in those episodes. I'm excited to be back. I'm Sue Willoughby, your host of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. And today we are tackling a topic that will make most people want to run for the hills, and that is money. I am so excited to welcome my guest, Julian Kolbrand. She's also known as the Budget Nerd, and she hosts her own podcast called the Debt Rebel Podcast. Despite having a degree in economics, Jules found herself staring down a $107,000 pile of consumer debt. It wasn't until she had a midlife ADHD diagnosis that she realized trying to apply neurotypical financial advice to a neurodivergent brain was like mixing oil and water. Today, Jules is going to teach us how to ditch the shame monster, navigate impulse control, which I think we all have a little bit of a problem with. I know I do. And finally, make our money work for our own unique brains. So let's dive in. We have kind of a taboo topic that we're going to discuss today. I think people would rather talk about sex than talk about money any day. So, having said that, I have an amazing guest on. She is known as Jewlz the Budget Nerd or the Debt Rebel. I'd like to welcome my guest, Julian Kolbrand. Jules,
Hi.
Welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you so much, Sue. I'm really excited for this conversation today.
I
love talking about money. Even though most people don't like to talk about it, I love to talk about it.
And that's why you're here. And that's a really good jumping off point. I want to know more about you and what you do. I want you to tell us a little bit more about what you do and how you've kind of gotten, if you want to talk in medical terms, a subspecialty within the financial coaching realm.
So I help ADHD women, moms, anyone with ADHD, help them figure out their day-to-day finances because if you're like me, I'm recently diagnosed thanks to a midlife what do you want to call it? My midlife strategy, if you will. I was not the person that I wanted to be. I was not the mom I wanted to be. So I went to therapy and found out that I have had ADHD my entire life, which explains why, even though I have a degree in economics, still ended up in over $107,000 in consumer debt. So that's why I felt like I needed to share my story with other people to encourage them, because if our brains work a little bit differently and we're trying to follow neurotypical advice when it comes to our money and we're trying to apply it to a neurodivergent type of life, that's not just gonna work out. So I've basically spent the last 26 years hyper-focused on finances and personal finance, what works, what doesn't. And so now that's what I love to teach people that, identify in that category, because it's like trying to blend oil and water if you aren't, looking at it a certain way. So that's what I'm really passionate about, is talking about it, because it is, like you said, a taboo topic. And I think that's kind of an old way of thinking that doesn't serve us well anymore. And it also is why, especially in the US, we have the highest rate of debt. And we don't want to talk about it. We don't talk about money. And it's not that we shouldn't talk about money. We should talk about it with the right people. And we don't necessarily have to share our bank statements and things like that. But let's talk about our goals and things that are important to us. And I just did an episode on my show recently about how it's important to be able to maintain our relationships, but it's not about trying to outspend each other. And so, especially with ADHD and rejection sensitivity dysmorphia, and trying to manage relationships, we want to kind of keep up with people, that keeping up with the Joneses topic, and that we think that sometimes we can get into these mindsets that's what our friendship looks like, and it's about maintaining that friendship. And so if you're working on financial goals, let's reframe that a little bit and say, hey, well, let's do something a little bit different that might not cost as much. And that's what we did, my husband and I did in our story, because we were really worried about losing some friendships and losing some important relationships in our lives. And so once we did that, we realized because people weren't talking about their money and we finally stood up and said, hey, this is important to us. Everyone else is like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad. Finally, someone said it out loud.
Thank God.
Yeah. So,
Right.
I think that's kind of one of the big takeaways for our family, but just being able to show up differently in life. That's also another thing that's super important to me. And money is a thing that we as a culture have said, this is how we're going to exchange value. And it doesn't define us. It doesn't, our credit scores don't define us. Our bank balances, our retirement funds don't define who we are, but it gives us opportunities to make choices and gives us options in life. Sometimes there are options that we don't necessarily love, right? But then other times, like for myself, it gave me the opportunity to stay at home with my daughter, who is a big plot twist in our life because, especially talking about midlife, this is kind of this was the big catalyst for me also to teach other people this different way of managing day-to-day finances. When my husband and I became debt-free after paying off that $107,000, we renewed our wedding vows at 10 years.
Nice.
And at the time, his oldest daughter was, she was 21, almost 21. And then a month later, I got pregnant with our daughter. And so they're almost exactly 21 years apart.
Oh my God.
And
Wow.
so we call her our plot twist. But now I look back and go, we had just started to focus on retirement. That was the next big life stage of, for us and big financial stage for us. And so we decided that was what we were just going to focus on. So we were like, all right, let's just sock away the money for retirement.
Now
And then
it's
she
college
came
fund.
along. Yeah. And now we're like, but
Oops.
because we had taken care of the financial part,
Mhm.
it gave us those options, those things to say, hey, I can stay at home with her, or I can start this business. That was something that I'm really passionate about. It gave us options and choices that weren't financial first. It was about the kind of life that we wanted to create for ourselves. So,
Nice.
yeah.
There's a lot to unpack in that statement. Because I'm just like making mental notes as you're talking. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And. That's a great journey. And I love that you were able to realize, like, when did you realize that? I mean, you said you got a degree in
Mhm.
finance. Hello. Yet you were still able to accumulate $107,000 in consumer debt.
Yeah.
Where do you think the train went off the rails there?
That is a really good question. It is a simple one day at a time. and it's
Yeah.
kind of the same way as reversing it too. It was these little things here and there. We didn't take, lavish trips around the world. My husband's family is in a different, other part of the country. And so sometimes we would go see them. His oldest daughter lived there as well. And so we would go visit. So it's not like we were going to Fiji, and
Darn it.
Right. I wish that was our story. But it was these, we would take these trips and then we would come home and we're like, oh man, I got to pay the electric bill. So put that on the credit card. But then we would spend the money that we were supposed to be putting on, paying for that electric bill that we put on the credit card.
Right.
And it was just like this. We were trying to spend $1 twice, basically. And so it just got out of control. And then I never actually sat down and added everything up until I started coaching. And someone said, well, how much debt did you have? And I was like, well,
a lot.
And that's kind of the first piece of the puzzle, is to just sit down and look at that clarity and say, okay, where am I? So it's just like if you're going to take a road trip across the country, okay, here's point A to point B. There are some very adventurous types that won't, plug in an address into the GPS or anything and just go for it. But I think the best way to do it is to just sit down and say, all right, let's look at where we are and where we want to go, and then create a game plan along there. So that was, I would say, where it went off the rails, it was just these one thing at a time, kind of going back to that, like trying to keep up with a lifestyle that we thought that we needed to, maybe not necessarily to impress other people, but I didn't realize that I was trying to impress other people. And so I think that was, looking back, where it really took a dive. And so, I mean, at one point we said, hey, told my family we're not giving gifts. And I was like, this is going to be really challenging because I like to receive gifts.
Who doesn't?
But,
right? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. And so, especially, if it's something that someone, thought specifically of me, and I was like, that's a really sweet, kind thing. And I love receiving gifts, but we also knew, okay, our finances, like it was ruining our sleep. It was ruining our marriage, all of health, all of these things. And so I was like, we got to fix this, because if we don't fix this, it's just going to get worse. So it is definitely not one of those things that you can, put on the blinders and go, okay, it's not.
Or stick your head in the sand, right? And just like, oh, I mean, because, when I was a kid, so this is another thing that I really want to talk about, is that the way we are with money, I think, comes from how we were brought up. I think there's a lot of ingrained stuff. Like, I remember my father saying to me very specifically, don't be like your mother. Just because there's checks in the checkbook does not mean that there's money in the account. And I'm like,
that's
okay.
a common one.
And I'm a kid, right? And I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, I get it. That one went right over my head, apparently.
Yeah, and no context for what that actually
means. What does
means.
that mean? That means that, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of like credit, right? Don't charge something if you can't afford it to pay it off, right? But I agree. I mean, I think it is definitely a slippery slope. And if you don't, and that was the other thing too, balancing a checkbook. Back in the old days, we used to get out the thing and try and balance it against the statement, and you write down all the check and all the things. And I'm like, oh my God. So now everything is online, and you're like, oh, it's just online. The paycheck gets deposited automatically in your account, and then the money goes out automatically, and you're like, I don't need to. I just look at the balance every once in a while, right? And then you get a insufficient funds notice, and you're like, oh shoot, I guess I missed something there.
Right.
Something automatically didn't happen.
But I have checks. So.
But I have checks and I have credit cards. So what could be wrong, right?
Right.
So, I mean, I think, tell me a little bit about that, and how, some of your clients, what kinds of stories we tell ourselves around money, or what kind of relationships we bring with us from our families and from our past.
Yeah. I used to work with teenagers a lot, and there is a very pivotal time in our upbringing that can really, in all areas of our life, not just money, but just, who we become as adults, that those teenage years, especially middle school, early high school, those times are very, very critical when it comes to defining and we obviously get to make our own choices, but with the way our brains work, and especially if we're working with a neurodivergent brain, then those things can be a little bit more intense and a little bit more literal. And so, don't be like your mom, with the money is like, well, wait a second. I see her using, coupons for things, or like, and so you don't have this very, there's not a lot of context for what your dad was trying to maybe communicate to you about that. And there's a lot of emotion tied to money. Because it does afford the kind of lifestyle that we maybe hope for, or maybe if we grew up in a environment that had a lot of scarcity, maybe more of a poverty situation, then we could go to that other extreme when we have the opportunity to manage our own money and be in control of that. And so we don't want to have that same life. Or maybe we do. Maybe you grew up in an environment where money wasn't talked about, but it was just freely given out. That's also another thing. So it doesn't necessarily, there's a lot of things and emotion wrapped up in that. And so what I love working with my clients on is like their individual story of how they came to where they are now, because that's going to help us in the future figure out, okay, some stuff, it's kind of like a necklace. When you pull out a necklace out of the jewelry box, it's like, okay, here's my money story. And so we have to kind of untangle it a little bit and see where's, kind of track it back to that root of what, at one point, like you had given the example, don't be like your mom. Well, what does that mean?
Right.
And especially if we have our own perspectives, that we are trying to, trying to apply to our life of what that might look like. Those words carry a lot of meaning, even though, especially as a parent, we might not have meant that as the thing that we wanted to communicate, but that was the words that came out. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And so when you talk about, like, you're specializing in people that identify with ADHD, diagnosed or undiagnosed or whatever, just because you said, like, our brains work differently. And I've always thought that that's me, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking about budgeting and finance, how does the neurodivergent brain look at things differently than the I won't even say normal brain, the un-neurodivergent brain? Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So why does the, the typical budgeting, programs or plans or whatever, why does it not work? What's the difference?
Yeah, this is a super good question, Sue, because each one of us that, fits into this category, we have a different level of neurospicy, I guess you could call it, So like some people might struggle with the impulse control part. Some people might struggle with time blindness. Yeah, I just paid that bill last week, but actually it was like 2 months ago,
Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
It could be that out of sight, out of mind, that object permanence of just, I didn't think about it. And so now it's, so visual cues are going to be helpful, to check. Or, those thermometers, a very stereotypical thermometer of like, a savings goal or a debt elimination goal, that kind of stuff.
Or your net worth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Wrong direction.
So it's, absolutely. It's seeing what, and then kind of the all or nothing thing. That's another one that I would say is probably one of the most popular ones that I come across. Is I have tried budgeting before, but it hasn't worked for me. And so it doesn't work for me. And so the one thing that I always encourage my clients is we are different people at every day where we've learned something new from yesterday and we're applying it to our lives. So we're constantly changing and evolving, and especially our brains and how we adapt to life. And so those supports need to change. So even the budget that I made last month is absolutely not the same one I'm going to be using to apply to this month, because my life looks different in this month. And so and that's what it is. Personal finance is just so personal. So each person is going to have a different level of support that they need and a system to put into place based on whatever their level of spice is at that time. And so, if it's life's really busy, then okay, like let's figure out how you can keep from going to takeout all the time, because that's your go-to. Or, the executive function part of ADHD, which is really fun when you get home and you're just like, I'm spent.
Right.
And I'm just going to eat ice cream because I don't have to prepare that,
Yes. Let's hear it for ice cream.
Right.
I have those moments.
So, it really just, it's very personalized, but those are kind of the big overarching ones that I come across a lot. Impulse control. Like for me, I cannot have a credit card. And I know this can seem very controversial, especially in the finance world and with, points and miles and all that stuff. We tried that, and then I missed the date for getting it paid. And so, the interest rate went from 0 to 29%, and then they wanted to increase the annual fee. And I was like, wait, this was supposed to be for a family trip. And I was like, this feels like dropping off an alcoholic at a bar and saying you're the designated driver. So
right.
I have it right here. This is my last credit card.
Oh, I love
cut it up as my reminder that like that's a support for me and our family that we have put into place. I know that doesn't work for everyone, but we have found the most success doing that, because if I don't have access to that, if I don't have access to it, then I can't use it. So, that's something that's been, it's a little bit, on the extreme side, but that's something that's worked for us. And so figuring out what works for each person and whatever level of support that you need, that sometimes it could be just getting those things on auto pay so it matches up with your bills, or your bills match up with your paydays. And
hopefully.
So Yeah. And you've spread those out. And so sometimes it is as basic as that. And then sometimes it is, okay, you know what? I'm going to have to do my pickup at Target instead of going into the store, because going into the store is immediately $50, $100, $150, you know? So just learning those triggers in your world and figuring out how to support those best.
I mean, like, for example, look at Costco. You go into Costco and it is a store that is designed for bulk impulse buying. I'm just going to get this tent today and a 55-gallon drum of some other shit I don't need, right? You know, because it's cheaper, because I get more. That's not always the answer, but I want to, you know, kind of just like but you know, it's interesting because as I hear you talking about finance and finance control and all of those things, it's not unlike dieting or any other addiction, right? Whether it be food, alcohol, drugs. I mean, you know, anything that involves impulse control. When you talked about impulse control, you know, like food and alcohol are two of the biggest, you know, things where there's, you know, impulse control or the lack thereof. And like you said, dropping the, you know, alcoholic off at the bar and being like, yeah, okay, you're in charge.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. And I think that our neurodivergent brains, those other things, like, you know, somebody wants to quit drinking or they want to quit smoking or they want to do something else, there's also going to be different approaches for all of those things, like you said, that fit our own personal whatevers. You know, so it's interesting that how the similarities between, you know, where we are. And I also want to talk about some of the stories we tell ourselves. You mentioned, you know, I've tried budgeting before. That just things like, oh, I've tried diets before, but they didn't work. I tried quit drinking, you know, before. So all these things, you know, the stories come up, and like those lines that automatically come out of our mouths, like, well, I'm just not good with money, or I'm bad with money, or you know, whatever it is, it's you've convinced yourself that you can't do this.
Yeah, because I think for so many years, at least this is my story. I like to share a lot from my story just because, I like to be an open book, but also I feel like there's a lot of things that I have uncovered, especially in this last couple of years after my diagnosis, that I realized, like, oh my gosh, there have been signs my entire life that this has been a challenge for me. And one is I feel like a square peg trying to fit into a round hole. And that's what this, like, especially with our money and the things that we tell ourselves, is that, like, I'm the thing that's wrong in this situation. And we're just trying to maybe follow advice, or we're saying things because we've heard them before and our brains naturally will latch onto those. And then we hold those like just so tight, and then they become part of our identity and who we are and our self-talk. And, you know, maybe it's something one person said a really long time ago, and then we just hold on to that. And I think one of the things that I've realized is if we've tried something before and it hasn't worked, then we've kind of broke this trust with ourselves that we can be good at things. And it's like, nope, my new thing that I've started saying, and even my 7-year-old daughter says, I'm good at other things. You know, some things that's not the thing I'm going to be great at right now. I haven't put a lot of effort into it. And so, okay, I'm going to be good at other things. Cooking is one of those things I'm really trying hard, but I'm good at other things. I'm way better at budgeting than I am at cooking.
There you go.
You know what? It's one of those things in life that I'm like, okay, if I'm going to make this budget work, I need to cook a little bit more. So trying to add a few more, you know, recipes to the cookbook there. But it's that broken trust with ourselves that I think that that's an area to work on when it comes to the language that we use with ourselves. I feel like it's very stereotypical, but it's also very true. Like, would we say the things that we say to ourselves to our very best friends, or, you know, other
like, you're horrible with money?
Yeah, sometimes we would, because
maybe, but
but you know, that's most of the time we probably wouldn't say those things to you know, to our loved one. And so just reminding ourselves, giving ourselves grace, especially if this is like new information to yourself. I know when I first got my diagnosis, or I, first started working on something, is like, I'm new at this. I'm learning what this looks like. How to, at first I was like, this is not happening. And I went through, those stages of grief where you're like, I'm not doing this. This isn't happening. And then you're like, okay, this is happening, like acceptance and things like that. And so getting to a spot where you go, okay, you know what? This is where we are. We're going to take some steps to move towards that. But that self-talk really is important. And especially when it comes to our money, because that's something that's not going to go away. And so I just encourage people to, even if it's one small step, like Mad Lib style, money affirmation, and just like, write it out. I'm going to be sending that out here shortly, but, is just create a little money affirmation for yourself. And so and I don't know all of the science part. I am not a scientist, but I have seen this play out, is when we say things over and over to ourselves, say something over and over to ourselves, our brains start to believe it. And so it doesn't know if it's a truth or the lie. And so that's where that language is so important, that if we say, you know what, I'm someone that's becoming great with money, or I'm becoming someone that can stick to this budget that I've created. I'm spending money with, in a way that aligns with my values, that kind of stuff. And so,
where it's more of a positive statement. It's just like anything, that if you keep saying, I'm not good with money, or, I'm not meant to have money, then guess what? You ain't going to get none.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, I heard a friend of mine said one time, I don't know, they had some bill come up or whatever. And it's like, well, there it goes. Every time I get ahead, something comes up, and we're just not meant to have more than X amount of money in our life. I'm like, okay. All right.
Put a bigger number in that X amount.
Right. Yeah. Whatever that X amount is, or like, and I don't even know if it was a specific amount. It was just like, we're not meant to have more than whatever our limit is, whatever that, I'm like, okay. Whew, that's a lot. Hang on to that. Go for it.
Perfect example. I was at the gym the other day, and I was struggling. My daughter was there, and I just looked at her and I was like, I can't do this. And it was not even another second later, she looks at me and she's like, well, not with that attitude. And I was like, at first I was like, what? That's harsh. And then I was like, she is right. So also, it doesn't matter what age you are, like, go for it, do it. I was so proud of her in that moment for just saying, hey, no, stop it. That's nonsense, Mom. And, that's absolutely incorrect. And I was like, whew. So, it was a little tough to hear in the moment, but she's absolutely right. Like,
did you go back and do it, whatever you were trying to do?
Yeah. My hands were just so worn out from carrying stuff that, I was like, all right, well, I guess I can, but she's not wrong.
Yeah.
Our attitude can really determine a lot of stuff. And I know, especially with the neurodivergent brain, that is an area that can be a very big challenge. And it has been for me. There's times where, I'm like, I can feel on top of the world. And then imposter syndrome comes in, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And it's like, okay, so what supports do you need in that moment? So
how can I do it?
Yeah. Sit down and write out the things that you can do. Or the things that you're grateful for, and try and, not in a toxic, positivity kind of way, but like reorient your brain, reframe it so that it is more positive language, because then our brains are going to be, we can hold on to that versus the hyper focus on something that's not as, life-giving to us.
Yeah. And there's so much truth in that. And you hear everything about being, mindful and all of the things. And it sounds like, just because it's so prevalent in our society, but there's a reason for that. I think, though, that we all, once again, have to find our own personal way of being that way. And when you are more grateful, or when you do give something, even if you feel like you don't have anything to give, whether it's financial or whatever, you can help out a neighbor, you can do whatever, and not have any expectations of reciprocity. I mean, that's the biggest thing. It's like, well, if I scratch your back, you'll scratch mine, right?
Sure.
And I'm just this is kind of a weird example, but it just kind of came to mind that it doesn't really matter what it is. If you're trying to create a more positive areas of your life, then yes, try reframing things. Try reframing how you think. Even if it doesn't come out of your mouth, it's still in your head. And if you can catch yourself and pull that thought back and flip it over, and I mean, because there's been times when I remember I wanted to buy an investment property, and it already had an offer on it, and all the things, and I'm also in real estate, so I was like, well, there's already an offer on it, and and that I think that they had accepted, or they were about to accept. I'm in the shower, and I get a lot of good thoughts in the shower, probably because it's so cleansing,
Likewise.
right?
Yes.
I'm like, oh, brain, have a huge brain fart in the shower. And I thought about it, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can top that offer that they have. I can take back my commission and give it back to the seller, right? I can flip my commission. I don't have to take it. I can put it back to the seller. I can, whatever. And so I wrote a different offer and got the house.
There you go.
Yeah. And it was interesting because it was going to be our financed offer. And then a friend of mine said, I can personally finance this for you. And so it ended up being a cash offer.
Wow.
Which was even stronger. Then come to find out, when I was doing my sewer scope on the house, it needed a new sewer line. So I negotiated that back out, and I ended up lower than what the original offer that they had accepted from somebody else was. And I'm like, sweet. So there's always a way.
Sure.
You just gotta,
everything is figure outable.
Yeah.
Everything is figure outable, especially with your money.
That's a t-shirt. Do you have t-shirts and bumper stickers? You need to have that in your merch store. Everything is figure outable.
Yes. Yes.
No, it's true though. You just have to look at things from a different angle. I mean, even, visually, if you look at something straight on, you're going to see one thing. If you turn and look at something a different way, you're going to see a completely different thing. Take Mount Rainier, for example. For those of us who live in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, we could be driving down the street and the mountain is out. And you're like, oh my God, she's so beautiful. And it looks huge. And then you turn a corner and then she looks like she's a million miles away. I'm like, how'd she get way over there?
Yeah.
It's just a perspective thing. It's
she didn't move.
What the heck is with her?
Absolutely. And the same thing. And I think that's why when it comes to like our money and not talking about it, we only see our perspective. And so having, someone else outside of your situation, whether it's financial advisor or a financial coach or someone to say, okay, you know what? This situation might not be as bad as you think it is. Or, hey, why don't we, think about it this way? And so, because we can, that's, also one of those great traits of ADHD is we can get so laser focused in one specific area that we only see the thing, like you said, that's right in front of us, and not some other perspectives that are like, wait a second, this could actually, when we pause, which is also very challenging.
Right.
And not to go, 180,000 miles in the wrong direction, So.
And be like, oh, shoot, how'd I end up here? Oh, well. But, so given the different ways that we can get in financial trouble, in your experience, is there one thing that, and I'll just give you a couple examples, that you see more than others? Like, is it completely ignoring finances? Is it kind of knowing what's going on, but not really knowing what to do with it? You know what I mean? So I think there's little buckets of how people get in financial trouble. Like, do you see one thing more than another?
I'd say that the biggest one is just not wanting to look at it. Because when we look at it, we can't unsee those things, and not in a bad way, but it gives us information. And that's all it is it's not to be a source of shame and regret, because I definitely have been down that route, and it's not helpful at all. But when we look at maybe our past spending or our past habits, and we can say, okay, this is information so that I can make a more informed decision next. And so, but if we don't look at that information, then we don't know. And especially for the ADHD brain, if we don't see it, it could not have happened, And so, just looking at it, but that avoidance thing, That's very, very common. Figuring out the next step, that's a little bit easier, but that first part of saying, okay, I want to be a willing participant in my finances now, and I want to take that first step. That's the hardest part. From there, then it becomes a little bit easier, because then you can say, okay, what area do I need support in right now? And it's not trying to overhaul and fix the entire thing at one time, because that's also that extreme all or nothing. And then it becomes super overwhelming. And so just picking the one thing, creating that spending plan, that budget that matches your life. And it takes a while to do that. It took me several months to get to one that was like, okay, this feels about right. And now we've kind of got this autopilot scenario for ourselves that we just make little quick adjustments here and there every month, because, each month looks different, but we kind of have that skeleton budget, that survival mode budget, and then everything else we can adjust from there. But it's really just deciding, okay, I want to look at this, and I want to take that information and make different choices moving forward.
Yeah, it's kind of like that red light on your dashboard that keeps coming on, and you hit the dashboard and it goes off, and you're like, I'm fine now. And you're driving down the road, it comes on again, whap. Okay, it's gone again. Okay, until the car just dies and it flips over and its tires are in the air, and you're like, I guess I should have did the check engine
because
light. I should have really checked the engine.
Is it just a loose connection with that sensor, or is there an actual problem? And that's the thing. If we don't check it, you don't know. Yeah. So but that was the other thing for me, is I was like, oh man, if I don't look at this stuff, this could become worse. This could become me sitting on the side of the road with a broke down car instead of, okay, I'm just gonna, run in and check the tires and make sure I don't have a flat tire, or is it just the sensor, Yeah,
exactly.
That was my life recently.
Like literally with the car, or
yes. The light came on and I was like, okay.
Like, maybe that means something.
I don't see a flat tire, but let's go get this checked, because
there's so many sensors.
We just had some rough road.
Yeah.
That's such an analogy for finances. It was like a rough road, and then, the connection was, it turned the light on, triggered the light, and then it turned out it was nothing, but then it went off, and I was like, well, is this a real problem, or is this just a fake problem that
that I can just stick my head in the sand and ignore until that happened to me, because the tires each have their own sensors on them, and and I think I was driving in the mountains or something, and of course they were all out of whack because the barometric pressure was different, and then I'm like, what's going on? So I finally find the place, and they're reading the sensors, and they're like, oh, it's just an atmospheric thing or whatever. I'm like, oh, okay. By the way, you should get one of those sensors replaced, and they're $250. And I'm like, bye, beep, beep, see ya.
Oh my gosh, such an analogy for finance right there.
Right? Bye-bye, we're good, thank you. Just the weather. Okay, no problem.
Yeah. Oh my. Oh, I feel like that's a good episode. I'm going to write that idea down.
Okay, there you go. Happy to hop in and help with that. Beep, beep. So you talked about something that I think is really important to think about when you do realize there's a problem and stuff. The shame monster creeps in, the guilt monster creeps in, and then you're surrounded by Monsters, Inc., right? Dragging you. Sully's in the closet ready to jump out at you.
I love that.
How do you address that? Because, shame and guilt is a real thing, whether you're Catholic or not, it doesn't matter. It's just, how do you help people overcome that? Because, when they do look at their finances and they're like, oh my God, I could have done things so differently. Why did I do that? And then they start clobbering themselves over the head.
Yeah.
How do we address that?
Yeah, that is so good. And to borrow from another Disney movie, actually, wait, Monsters Inc. That's a DreamWorks, right? Anyway,
I don't know. It's one of those, but anyways, yes, go ahead.
Anyway, to borrow from another one of my childhood movies, Lion King.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
and you hit it right on the head, literally, because there is a part in that movie where um Rafiki takes his stick and hits Simba on the head. And he's like, "Hey, what was that for?" And he said, "It doesn't matter. It's in the past." And I was like, that is absolutely true.
I
Like,
love that.
and not to be like trivial or anything like that. There are things that, that have happened. We've made choices. We cannot change those. That
Right.
is, and so and this for me, I was like, the shame and regret thing was so real. I
Yeah.
spent 4 years studying this and then made different choices. And so I was like, I don't want to tell people. And especially when I felt called to start this business, that I was like, I don't know if I should tell people that, because it's awful, right?
Like, they're not going to trust you. You're like, well,
yes.
you get yourself $100,000 in debt. What the heck?
Yeah.
How are you going to
Yeah.
help
Like,
me?
what does she know? And then,
But you do know, because you're out of it now.
yes.
Yeah.
And so once I started to unpack that, and, I did talk about with some people in my life that I trusted, that I said, okay, I'm feeling this way about this. And, so processing it outside of yourself can be helpful. Journaling and that kind of stuff, but remembering that the things that have happened in the past, we can't change, and just really holding on to the fact that that's information to decide to do life differently moving forward, whatever it is, whether it's your finances or whatever. And then seeing, asking for help. That is a really, really hard, challenging part of life. But I believe we're supposed to do life with other people, and, to have meaningful relationships with other people. And so asking for help is part of that. And it's asking the right people for help. I'm not going to go to my doctor and say, "Hey, help me with my finances." Like, I'm going to go to my doctor and say, like, "All right, like, this hormone thing is not working out for me." Like, so that kind of stuff, it's going to the right person, and,
Yeah.
and someone that you trust, that you can, process that with. Maybe it is a therapist, depending on what your story is. I know that was very helpful for myself, because it was someone that was outside. It wasn't a family member, and it wasn't someone that knew anything about me. And then I got to share from my perspective, kind of going back to that perspective piece.
Yeah.
Like, we come to life at all different ways. And so, realizing that our story is our story. And if there's parts of it that we want to change, we're the only ones that have the capability of doing that. And so, just, it's making that decision and then taking those tiny steps, but remembering that the things that have happened in the past, that's what it is. It's the past. And so we can only control the present and hopefully a little bit of the future.
That's so true. That is so true, because that's how we tell those stories. We just, let's see, what tape can I pull out of the, the tape deck, plug it in.
Yeah.
Tape deck, listen to me, I'm old. Put it on the reel to reel. And yeah, and then we just rely on those stories. But I loved the fact that, when you said, talk to somebody that you trust. Maybe it's not somebody that's even in your inner circle.
Mm-hmm.
You have to feel safe
Mm-hmm.
in about anything, whether it's,
Mm-hmm.
quitting drinking, or whether it's, whatever it is, or money troubles. Sometimes you don't feel good talking about it with even your besties, because you're like, we're always afraid of being judged, right? So,
Yeah.
you can talk to my horse, because he's never going to judge me. He's like, "Oh, it's cool. All right, whatever."
Right?
Oh, he does talk like that. So, but creating that safe space and feeling comfortable and supported, I think, when you're going through something like that, or when you realize, I need help, I need support, seek that help.
Yeah.
And if you don't know where to seek it, call Jules. But yeah, I think it's important to, whenever we're doing anything that's a big life change,
Yeah.
to help ward off the guilt and the shame monsters, find people that aren't going to call you out call you out in a good way, and then
Right.
say, let me support you. Let me help you.
Yeah.
Let me
In
show
a
you.
loving way.
Yeah,
Because it
in a loving
absolutely can
way.
be done in a loving way.
Yeah, absolutely, which is what you do.
Yeah. That's my goal.
That's your goal anyway, right? So tell us a
Yeah.
little bit more about what you offer to your clients and to people that aren't yet your clients.
Yeah. So I do one-on-one coaching. And that's definitely for, the kind of person that's like, okay, I'm not ready to share, parts of my story with maybe strangers, because I do have a group membership program. The cool thing about what I do is it is something for everyone. So if there's that one-on-one that, you just really want that focus attention, no one else needs to know any of that information. But then there's that group aspect. And so the thing that's really cool about that is, someone else is going to ask a question that maybe you haven't thought of, or they're going to share a perspective like we've been talking about that you hadn't considered, or you haven't seen it that way before. And so there is, especially, I talked about, doing life with other people. And so that is one of the reasons why I created that membership, is so that, it's more affordable coaching, but also there's so many things that we can learn from each other. I don't know everything. We're just on a call. No.
Well, that's it. Podcast over.
I don't know everything about finance. I know a lot about finance, but there's things that are going to be different for each of us. And so like just recently on one of our calls, one of our members shared something and I was like, I haven't tried that before. Like that's great, And so,
Yeah.
it's a really cool community to be able to be a part of that and share different things, because every single one of us comes to life with different stories and perspectives and ideas. And so just being able to share those in that setting, I think is really, really cool. So.
And someone else in the group may be further along in their journey than you are. And you can say, oh, okay, cool. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So full disclosure here, I met Jules on it was a podcast speed dating thing.
Yes.
Not dating, but it's like, podcast matching things. And,
Yes.
And I loved what she had to say. And I'm like, yeah, I pretty much could be ADHD, undiagnosed or whatever. And I also thought that it would be a great topic to have on, because I do think that also midlife women may be in a position where, what if their husband has passed or their partner has passed, whoever that spouse may be, and that person was the one handling the finances. And now they're like, oh my God, I had no idea what was really going on. Or, they're getting ready to retire. And how do you change things when you retire and you're not making six figures anymore without getting yourself, and you're on more of a fixed income. And so I have joined your group and getting a handle on things. I was one of those ostrich in the sand people with the check engine light going, it's fine, it's fine, it's
Just tap
fine.
the dashboard.
Keep driving, hit the dashboard again, keep driving. And so I can honestly say that, it's so far, and I'm just fairly new to your sphere, but it has been really helpful. One thing was really funny in the group chat thing, somebody mentioned going on and finding, where you can go online and you can find missing money or unclaimed money or whatever.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was kind of a hokey thing. And I actually went onto the website, and it's not a hokey website. They don't have to pay anything for this.
Nope.
It literally goes out and searches. And if you see things that under your name that look like, oh yeah, that was me. That was, I was in that place. That was a city, town, whatever.
An old bank account maybe you forgot about.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
Right. Or
Insurance
some old
policy
utility thing, a rebate on something. And I was like, oh, I found some things. And then I was like, well, I'm going to also look under my mom's name because she's deceased and I took care of her estate and everything. Holy shit. There's a whole bunch of stuff there. So I'm like, submit. We'll see, you never know. But, just little tips like that. Like you said, it's little baby steps. It's and getting that encouragement from other people to do things. So I love that. And I highly recommend it. Also, you are just a really cool person. Sometimes, when we go to professionals, whether it be medical professionals, financial professionals or whatever, they're the ones that kind of add that extra layer of shame. And you're like,
Mm,
I'm doing the best I can. Yeah, but you got to stop, and that's where the neurodivergent
yes.
thing comes in. You can't do this anymore. You got to stop doing this. You get, and
Yeah.
you're like, well, now I really feel like shit. Thanks for nothing.
Yeah.
You're
So I'm
supposed to be
not going to do
helping
it.
me. Right.
Yeah.
Right. But your
Yes.
approach is so different. And
Well, thank
I
you.
mean, if someone's not neurodivergent,
Yeah.
can they still come to you?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I've just seen so much. When I first started this, I didn't niche down to that area because I was like, oh, well, one, I hadn't identified that for myself. And I also didn't say, oh, that, that makes a lot of sense. And then I started learning more through my own diagnosis and realized that there have been signs this entire time. And then I started talking to more people in the neurodivergent community, and they're like, yes, this is so needed. And I said, well, I feel like I figured this out. Like, I know this stuff. Now I want to help other people because of that. That shame and regret feeling is just, it is the worst. It is so awful. It feels like this giant heavy backpack that you're carrying around all the time that no one sees.
Right.
But you're just like lugging it around. And so thank you for saying all that, because that's my biggest goal in all this, is that I want to make personal finance super approachable for all people, but especially, people that identify, those ADHD symptoms, those are real things. And so whether that applies to you or not, if maybe there's some that you're like, I lose track of time all the time. Like, I can't get my bills paid on time. Like, let's figure out a system that works for you and for your money, and then, and go from there. And so that's, it's just super important to me that people feel comfortable and to ask questions, because that is the best way to learn, is just ask the questions. And there's absolutely no such thing as a stupid question. I like to say the only stupid question is the one that you don't ask. Like, ask it because someone else is probably thinking it, and we have to be brave. And that was kind of with my story, is sharing my story. Like, I need to have that 1 second of just brave, like, oh my gosh, have you seen We Bought a Zoo?
Yes. A long time ago, but yeah.
So he's, talking about asking his wife out, or what, I think that's the scenario, but he's like, you just have to have like that 1 or 2 seconds of just brave, just take that step. And then it gets better from there. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to share my story. And it has been so encouraging to hear other people say, thank you, because I've felt this way too. And I don't want to continue to feel that way. And so, if one person can be encouraged by that, then my job is done.
I love it. Yay. Let's hear it for Jewlz the Budget Nerd. I love that, because that is actually your Instagram handle. Jewlz the Budget Nerd.
Yes.
I love that. I think it's great. Well, and like I said, you're approachable, because some people are afraid to talk about things just because they feel like they're going to get their hands slapped. Like, as a kid, you're like, well, I did this thing bad, oh.
Right. And that, in this scenario, that doesn't help. That doesn't encourage. It makes you want to retreat in the other direction. And so my goal is literally to coach you to that next step. Like, okay, let's figure out what that next best step is for you. We don't have to do like the whole thing, but the next best step. And then, as you get more of those and you build that trust and that confidence with yourself again, then you're like, I can do this. I can pay off $107,000 in debt.
Right.
And that's
all at once, obviously.
Right. It didn't happen overnight, so it's not going to be undone overnight.
Exactly. Right. Like you said, it was a slippery slope. It was just a little bit like, the old saying, right? How to eat an elephant one bite at a time, right?
Yeah. Yeah. You can drain the whole pool by one little pin.
Wouldn't that be great if it were just that easy? But still, you have to get it trickled in, so you've got to trickle it back out again.
Yeah.
This has been so much fun, and we could go on and on and on. Is there anything other than what you've already said that you'd like to, put a big bow on it and, leave my listeners with one or two things?
I think, I've said a lot. I've said a lot of things. I'm a talker. I did not really, I was a great student, talks too much in class. That was always me. I love to learn new things, but and that's what I would leave listeners with, is just be curious about your money, about what your situation's like, and then, those next steps of what it looks like, whether, it is, me helping you, or if it's just, grabbing a book or doing something that take that next step to improve your finances. That was my encouragement, is to just take one little tiny step, that one brave moment, to look at it and pull up your account and say, hey, all right, this is information. So
yeah, you may not like the information that you find, but it's just information. And I think that that's really important. And I'm just going to throw the horses in here because I always do.
Yes.
Using horses, working with horses in my coaching practice, it's just information. And that's how they go through life, because the information that they're taking in through all of their senses is information about their survival. Is that, how is that affecting me? Should I be scared? Do I need to run? Is that plastic bag going to kill me? No. Okay. Then I've processed that and I can go back to grazing. So if you take in those little bits of information as they come, understand what they are, what they really mean, and then let them go and then move forward, it's a big, it helps to just, like you said, always be curious. ABC, always be curious. Start asking some questions, start seeking some resources that you feel comfortable with, and build that safety net, that security, that place where you can then move forward.
Yeah.
So, and don't be shamed. Don't put Sully, the shame monster. Sorry, Sully.
No.
He's not the shame monster. Poor guy. I'm beating up on him. He's so cute. Don't pack around the shame monster, whoever you want to name it.
Drop that backpack.
Exactly. All right, Jules, this has been such a fun conversation. How can people get in touch with you if they want to work with you or find out more about ditching the shame monster?
I always love chatting with you, Sue. We have the best conversations. So I really appreciate you. Thanks for letting me be a part of your show. I love hanging out on Threads lately. That has been my favorite place. So you can find me on Threads, Jewlz the Budget Nerd, JEWLZ. Thank you to year 2000. That is a year 2000 spelling. And then my website, Jewlz the Budget Nerd, I've got a freebie on there that you can, if you trying to figure out a paycheck plan. So not trying to create a whole budget, but from now until your next paycheck, what is that going to look like? So you can jump on my website and grab that there, jewlsthebudgetnerd.com, and then /guide for that one. So,
and don't forget your podcast.
Yes, the Debt Rebel podcast. So that's available on all platforms, and that's that's a fun one. Quick, most of the episodes are 15 minutes or less because we have
ADHD.
But there's always an action step to apply to your money, and so that's a great place to get started, especially if you enjoy podcasts like Sue's. That's another place to hop in. So
awesome. Do you have an episode where it would be a good episode number that people could start with? Like, because you have a number of episodes out.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's kind of just, you have, a couple episodes that are like key episodes for people that are just, they can listen and be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So, episode 128 is kind of going back to that earlier topic we were talking about, keeping up with the Joneses kind of thing. But just about engaging in social activities with our friends and loved ones without going into debt. And so if you're working on those financial goals and it's like sometimes we don't know what to say, then that episode's going to be a great one to help give you some words to say, but also that mindset of, okay, this is an area that I want to focus in on, but I still want to maintain my relationships because I feel like that's a very important part of life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
cool. All right, episode 128, and I'm going to put all of your links in the show notes. And as always, thank you so much for listening. I know you have a choice about where your ears land and what to dial into. And so thank you for listening today. And if this episode resonated with you, great. If it might resonate with a friend, politely send it their way, because I think everybody out there has something in their life that they're sweeping under the rug and that they're afraid to talk about. So maybe even if it's not finances, maybe this will help them. So I don't know. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode of Midlife Strategies for Badass Women. Jules, thanks again. This is Sue Willoughby signing off.